Hello, my name is Seema Bansal. I work with the Boston Consulting Group and I lead BCG's social impact practice in India and Asia Pacific. Pleasure to be speaking here today, and we're going to talk about investing our CSR funds and why rural India matters. India lives in its villages. Rural India accounts for 70% plus of India's population. These are standard phrases that all of us studied in school and know to be a fact. But it's also a fact that while India struggles on many dimensions of development, the gap between urban and rural is humongous. In the corporate world, it's called the story of two nations: India, the more developed modern urban counterpart, and then there is Bharat, the left behind rural, poorer cousin. When we start looking at some of the statistics, especially the SDGs, the story is really telling. If I look at infant mortality, it's in the range of late 20s for urban India and as high as 40s for rural India. Similarly, underweight children, 20s for urban India and late 30s for rural India. Education, the space that I work in and I'm most passionate about, electricity and water availability in rural schools is often less than 20%, especially in states like Bihar and Jharkhand, whereas in urban schools, it can be as high as 80%. 70% of rural schools have a teacher shortage, and almost no urban schools have the same issue because all teachers want to be in urban cities. And female literacy rate in urban India is in its 80s and in rural India it's in 60s. The same story holds true when we look at electricity availability, such a critical piece for the development puzzle. It's linked to better education, more employment, greater women empowerment, less crime. And the difference between urban and rural India is nearly 10 percentage points. And going forward, the biggest threat in the times to come is going to be climate change. Everyone is talking about climate change globally as well as in India, but its impact is going to be felt most in rural areas, given the linkage with agriculture, with food systems, with water availability, and related droughts and floods. In that context, isn't it surprising that India's CSR support is largely urban focused? Data indicates that, barring manufacturing companies and oil and gas companies, where significant CSR efforts are made in rural development and those topics, largely in the communities around the plant locations, the investment in rural CSR for most other organizations is inversely proportional to the magnitude of issues. Consumer goods companies, FMCGs, financial services companies score somewhere in the middle. And technology companies, telecom companies are perhaps amongst at the lowest end of rural investments. Of course, this is not surprising. I think one can understand this also. Familiarity of context, ability to touch and feel the change when it's in your vicinity, ability to see it and showcase it, and just greater access to organizations, NGOs who operate in urban contexts lead to this investment bias. However, it is important to recognize that India is not going to move forward till rural India moves forward. In fact, urban India won't move forward fast enough if rural India doesn't develop, because the migration out of desperation from rural to urban is not going to stop. The word village has a very different definition in the Western world and in India. The image we conjure up when someone says an English village is very different from an Indian village today. So, the $1 million question is, how much of this gap can we close if we move towards a more equitable distribution of India's CSR investments? How much faster can we move India towards its goals through some smart investments? This will take effort, it will take search, it will take time, it will take risk taking ability. But I think if we all care about SDG goals and them being met, it's probably worth all of that investment. Thank you.